Hello, welcome to The Brain Meets Emotional Regulation. Have you ever felt like this? I think we all do at times. There are just some moments or days that make us feel like not only are our students out of control, but we're ready to lose it ourselves. We would probably all rather have our classrooms looking like this, or at least some variation of this. Everyone engaged, interacting, and on task. So what happens that brings us and our students to the point where we flip our lid? And what can help us if we've reached that point? Well, today, that's what we're going to talk about. Dr. Daniel Siegel, a neurobiologist, explains it this way. He uses his hand as a model of the brain so we can understand how the parts of our brains work together and what can happen to make those systems break down. First, we start at the base of the brain, or the heel of my hand. This part is called the brainstem, or the primitive brain. All animals have this part of the brain. It controls states of arousal, are we awake or asleep, alive or dead, and the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. Essentially, this is the part of the brain that keeps us alive. Moving on up through the interior of the brain, we have the limbic system, represented by my thumb. This part is also called the feeling brain, and I'll bet you can guess why. That's right, emotions as well as memories start in this part of the brain. All mammals have a limbic system, so yes, you really can say that your dog or cat love you. The limbic system helps to assign meanings to situations and regulates the hypothalamus, which is the endocrine control center of the brain. This tiny gland releases cortisol when we are stressed. Cortisol is the hormone that mobilizes energy and puts our whole body on alert. In students who have experienced a lot of trauma or have a high ACE score, this gland can sometimes work in overdrive all the time, thus making it more difficult for them to stay calm. My curled fingers over the top represent the cerebral cortex, or the thinking brain. Though many mammals also have a thinking brain, it is most highly developed in humans, especially the front part called the prefrontal cortex, or the human brain. This function of these two parts is to think, have ideas, make moral judgments, and control impulses. The prefrontal cortex is not fully developed in humans until about age 25, and in students with high ACE scores, it can be underdeveloped even then. So what happens in our brains when emotions take over? Well, when something in our environment, like a sight or a sound or even a smell, activates our brainstem that we could be in danger or need to react in some way, the brainstem sends a signal to the limbic system. In essence, it says, "Hey, limbic system, we got a problem here. What are we going to do?" The limbic system then assigns meaning to the situation, and if it is bad, it will activate the hypothalamus, which then starts squirting cortisol into the brain. Now, the good thing about cortisol is it can help us get out of Dodge when things are really bad. The bad thing, though, is that it really gums up communication between the thinking brain and the feeling brain. In fact, when enough cortisol floods the brain tissue, all communication can be lost and we flip our lid. This can happen to anyone, so learning ways to slow the process down can be helpful for you as well as for your students. One way that adolescents and adults can help to find calm in the midst of the storm is to remember SNAP and what it can stand for. This acronym has been adapted from teaching by Suzanne Stabile. S stands for stop. Take a deep breath. Give yourself a moment to pause and realize what's happening. This is also a moment to grant yourself some grace. Everyone experiences big emotions sometimes, and it's our choice of behavior in the middle of it that can make the difference. N is for notice. Emotions often have physical reactions as well. Take note of what your body is telling you. Where are you feeling this emotion? In your shoulders, your stomach? Has your heart rate gone up? Learning where in your body you experience different emotions can help you to name them, and if you can name them, you can tame them. A is for ask. Now that you've identified the physical reaction, try to name your emotion. Start with the big three: anger, anxiety, or sadness. chances are whatever you're feeling will fit into one of those broad categories. Now ask yourself another question. What can you do to help yourself? Or where can you go to get help with this emotion right now? And then P is for pivot. Now it's time to make a choice about your behavior. You can do this. You can handle this situation in a way that you won't regret later. Now I know that this sounds like a long process, but I promise if you start to practice it for everyday situations, ones that won't lead to a meltdown, then when the big emotions come, you'll be able to work through the steps quite quickly and find yourself calming down. This process of finding calm is also called making space. It's the idea that if we can just pause for a moment, we can give our thinking brains time to catch up and reestablish the communication with the limbic system so we can regain calm. There are a lot of ways to do this, and you can practice them in your classrooms with your students until they become second nature. Here are just a few examples. Drink water. Water flushes cortisol out of the brain and the body. You can visibly see the tension go out of a student's shoulders as the water works its magic. Encourage students to drink water if they are upset. Stress balls, or even just tightening all of your muscles and then slowly releasing the tension while you do mindful breathing, can bring about a calm state very quickly. Meditation, mindfulness, or just finding a quiet spot. Changing your environment, giving yourself something new to look at, can do a lot to help you gain a sense of calm and perspective on the situation at hand. Looking up. This is kind of cool brain science too. When the eyes are up across the top of the head, the brain is processing visual information. The momentary distraction helps students pause and regulate their responses. So when a student is upset, ask them to look up. It engages their cerebral cortex, which means that their limbic system can't work overdrive anymore. The bottom line is that emotional behavior is still behavior. Students and adults can learn new ways to manage their emotional reactions and return to a state of calm more rapidly once they understand what's happening in their brain, identify what methods of making space work for them, and practice when their emotions are stable. Thank you for viewing this video tutorial. I hope that it's helped you to think of new ways to interact with your students in the classroom and help them to learn how to regulate their own emotions.